All right, and we're live. I'm very excited because I have JP and Julie Collins here. They have a fantastic website and YouTube channel called Book of Ours. They're producing great content that's challenging the mainstream lies and the COVID fear narrative. And so, yeah, I'm so excited to have y'all here. Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. It's been a weird week, hasn't it?
Yeah.
It's been a weird year.
Yeah, well,
and the weirdest week of that year, probably.
The weird year has actually coalesced our work, or our focus, I guess, is the best way to put it.
It really
we are artists, video artists, and we were working on different things here and there, talking about social and political topics, but nothing specific. We were going to get into a thing about the Green New Deal and all the things that are going on with like Greta and all that stuff, Greta Thunberg, and we follow like Cory Morningstar and her work, but so we were going into that direction, and then COVID happened.
Yeah. We had hoped also to do more things with our community. We were considering even starting our own 501c3 to do like community events where people could get together and do, art displays and,
Well, I can give you some pointers, and because I just went through all the process, all the paperwork with my organization, I Do Not Comply. Which I launched back in July, on 4th of July weekend. So to mount a resistance to all these draconian measures and unconstitutional mandates that have taken over our lives under the guise of public safety. But so my advice, I can walk you through all that paperwork, because now I know it's a lot of bureaucracy and it takes forever. The IRS, it turns out, is they're not so fast. It's when you're dealing with a big bloated bureaucracy, it's not super efficient,
especially now, right? And we decided not to do that anyway, because it involved people getting together, and with things the way they are, we were just like, we're going to be spinning our wheels trying to do this.
Right. So it would be half of our effort would be trying to convince people to come out, because and it's just it only works if there's no pandemic.
Or fear of other people,
other people.
And then also, like, even if we did do that and we said, you don't have to have a mask on and all that, then we'd be fighting the other side of the bureaucracy of some of these restaurants are doing.
Right.
And, so we just.
So we're throwing all of our energy into our creative work.
Yeah. Which is ultimately the best thing anyway for us.
Because, which is really who we are.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think, that's one of the, that's great to hear that you found that to channel your energies into. And I see you're already up to thousands and thousands of subscribers on YouTube. So the content you're putting out there is getting a warm reception. And so I try to find the silver linings in this crazy of a year. Like this year it's been so transformative. I think it's showed us who our real friends are, who we can really count on, who is going to choose, their family and loved ones over, or choose the media over their loved ones. Are they going to believe the mainstream script, or are they going to put like humanity and what they feel in their gut over that?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I bought a house this year. I'm a first time gun owner. Never wanted to own a firearm. I'm one of those guys. I'm part of the all the booming arms industry, I guess, as it is. And I bought a house and I started a nonprofit organization. So there's been some silver linings to it.
Yeah, some serious changes in your life. I think I had heard that you were sort of on the Democrat side of things your whole life or something, and then you switched.
I will say I feel like my positions really haven't changed in a lot of ways. I just think the political spectrum has shifted. What I thought, if you look at the 90s, the left or the liberals of that time were the ones speaking out for freedom of speech. They were saying, you shouldn't censor rap music. You shouldn't censor Rage Against the Machine. Now the left are the most censorious. They
Right.
want to shut down free speech. They want to shut down free discourse and debate. So I don't feel like I so much have changed, but I think the spectrum has changed. But in the past, I've always, for presidential candidates, I've always voted for an independent or Green Party candidate. I will say in 2016, I voted for Jill Stein. Before that, I think I voted for Ralph Nader two or three times.
Yeah, same here. I was a Green Party member for, well, since I voted. I was I was a member, or a, voting Green.
For years.
Yeah, well, starting
Decades.
I voted for Nader against Clinton.
Yeah.
Bill Clinton.
Nice.
Yeah, and we voted for Jill Stein too.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, and we went to see her speak. We actually went to a little house party in San Francisco.
We met her.
So y'all were probably in California then. Were you still living in California?
Yeah.
So, so that was kind of cool. But since then we've shifted our political focus dramatically, although not so dramatically, because I feel like I've come full circle in my own personal political tendency. So
I will say my activism history. I started during the Bush years, and I was part of an organization called Not in Our Name, and it was all about opposing the war on terror and the blank check for war in the Middle East, using the events of September 11th as kind of that catalyst or impetus for just nonstop war against that invisible enemy, which was Al Qaeda or then ISIS or whatever Islamic group. Not that there isn't a true threat from Islamic extremists, but it felt like there was a darker, more nefarious agenda behind that blank check for war. And now we're dealing with that. The war on terror seems like that paradigm has now just been turned on us, where it's now we're the terrorists. Everybody is a walking biohazard, and the war on terror has become the war on all of us.
Well, you're a terrorist for breathing.
Right.
The whole idea of turning something like CO2 into something that you need to curtail and squash down. It's like it's the building block of life, and yet we're being told that there's too much CO2 in the world, and it's like, how? I'm not sure if that's really the case. And
I mean, it feels like, since we're carbon-based life forms, that when they say we need to reduce carbon emissions, is basically what they're saying is that they want to reduce us. Mm-hmm. They want to reduce the population. Every time I see, Bill Gates say that we need to go after the virus, I know what he's really saying is we need to go after human beings.
Absolutely.
So I equate that kind of language with these really, sort of genocidal and eugenicist type philosophies, that have always been kind of behind the scenes. Like they've never really been out front, and now it's out front. Now they're being pretty transparent about their goals.
It is, 100%. It is an open conspiracy. We saw, the Klaus Schwab writing about the Great Reset in last week's. It was set to be the cover story. I think they changed it the last minute, and they changed it to a Shepherd Fairy illustration of a woman with a handkerchief saying "vote" on it. But maybe there was alternate covers. But I know the original cover was supposed to be just the Great Reset, and it showed these workers restructuring the globe, and then somebody had to put a piece of the planet back.
Yeah.
And they're quoting Klaus Schwab on the front. And we have Bill Gates, openly talking about using vaccines to depopulate the earth, to reduce the world's population, which should set off a red flag for every sensible person on the planet, right?
Of course, that it would. But
if you're living longer, right, and you're saving people from disease with vaccines, which is their claim, then people are going to live longer. There's going to be more people alive. There's going to be more people breeding. And when he's pressed on this, he goes, it's this odd phenomenon when people are healthy and they live longer, they tend to have less kids. And that's why the vaccines will help to depopulate the world.
Yeah, they've been saying that for a long time. We caught an old interview with Melinda Gates in Africa on like 60 Minutes or something.
60 Minutes, yeah.
We used it in one of our videos, and she's just basically, outright saying, it's like, well, this.
We need to sterilize these people.
Yeah. So this woman, she'll be better off if she has less children.
If she's sterilized, I mean, just awful.
And that's what we're up against. We're up against this elite billionaire class, this globalist cabal that thinks they are in the position to call the shots for all of humanity.
Right.
And I think the frightening realization for a lot of us was when COVID supposedly hit, when the scamdemic started in March, when you saw every country, sans maybe Sweden and Belarus, fall lockstep behind the script. It was like they already controlled this. It was almost confirmation that New World Order, that agenda, it exists and it's already here. And they've already taken control of our countries, of our democracies.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Right. Yeah. Yes. Like I say a lot, I don't know if you follow the live Facebook feeds I do every once in a while, but I do say a lot, your country has been occupied. And it doesn't feel like an occupation because you don't have jackbooted thugs walking down your street. This is a corporate coup d'etat. This is a capture of your sovereignty. The voter has been rendered useless.
Well, that's a great segue into this week.
Isn't that
topic,
yeah. Well,
the topic on everybody's mind is this week's election, which the media wants to say it's already been resolved and we have a winner. Trump is contesting it. What are your thoughts on this circus of a week with the election?
To go along with like what we were talking about before, as a transition is the whole corporate feel-good language surrounding everything from how they're taking over and why using words like equity and equitable and
sustainable
and things like that. Meaning that like we're all going to be equally poor when they get their way. But then that transitions into the language that's being used by, say, the Democratic Party. And even, so you go from like corporate feel-good language that's very beige to very extremist language that's basically equating anyone who supports another idea or set of values as a white supremacist or a racist, and it's
these full false equivalents.
Yes, and it's we pay attention to language a lot in our work, and it's always very disconcerting to watch people just buy into these things, and so along the lines of like what. What's his name? the apparent president-elect, Biden.
Oh, Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe. Yep.
Creepy Joe. Along with like his speech as well as Kamala's. These corporate ways of speaking are also part and parcel of the agendas behind their platforms.
Right.
Well, and they've already adopted the "Build Back Better" motto, which is the slogan of this great reset. Of this New World Order, basically. We have Prince Charles of Wales parroting it. We have the Prime Minister in Germany. We have multiple other pawns of this agenda using that slogan. Boris Johnson in the UK. I mean, and it's terrifying. I mean, you see this week's Time magazine they're announcing President-elect Biden, and it's Biden and Harris with their masks on. They could have used any other picture, but it's the symbolism. Sure. I don't know if you can, you probably can't see it, but it's you're right. But it's them holding their hands up with their black, New World Order slave masks on.
Yeah, I feel that regarding the election itself, of course, being that we are not participating in the electoral process, and just to put that out there, we don't fault anybody who does. We read the room. We know that this is the United States of America, and a lot of
you're part of the problem, man. You could have stopped this.
Right.
We're not allowed to complain now because we don't vote.
Well, George Carlin had a great bit about that. He was, it was like, you say I can't complain because I don't vote, but you can't complain. You cast your vote.
Right.
You're part of, so, but I hear you. Go ahead.
I know. I think that obviously we have a one-party system. It's run by corporate interests. It's, and now it's escalated, in the age of COVID. COVID has been a nice cover to transition into global interests. Some people call it the New World Order. We call it globalization or global interests or corporate fascism. That's what we call it. And
global governance.
One
of their own words,
So
or phrases.
We feel that either with either candidate or with either president, that these initiatives and these policies will be affecting us no matter who's in office. But
so can I ask you a question about that? So did you think that Trump was just controlled opposition the whole time, or was it just an act that he spoke for free market capitalism and individual liberties at the World Economic Forum, and that he's there's some of us that have really felt like maybe that Trump really stands for the people. Maybe he is this last vanguard between that crony global socialism, global fascism, and freedom. But do you think it was all an act?
I think JP maybe feels that way, but I got to be completely honest. Like every day, my opinion on that very question changes because I'm like, well, wait a minute. He did play with Bill Clinton on the golf course before the 2016, shenanigans hit us. So what were they talking about?
I go back and forth too. Like at my most conspiratorial, I'm like, the Democrats put him into play. They got him to do this thing to where it's like, no, he's just playing along.
I think that at the end of the day, my true feeling is that with a Trump presidency, these global initiatives that are incredibly anti-life and punitive in nature would have been held off a little bit more. Like he would have been able to hold them at bay
a little bit,
and maybe I don't know. But I feel that with a Biden-Harris ticket, they will be put on steroids. And it will come fast.
At the same time, though, Trump has said that he supports stakeholder capitalism, which is basically
human capital markets,
right? And that's the World Economic Forum's biggest thing. That is Klaus Schwab's baby. He came up with that concept in the 70s, and it's been
he coined that term. Where did Trump say that? Do you recall what speech or?
I don't remember.
You got us.
You got us. It was probably reading one of our.
I'm fact checking you. I'm fact checking. I don't know.
Well, we know that it's something that we have heard in our little, group.
Probably from Allison.
Probably from Allison McDowell.
Probably.
So, whether she's correct in that assessment or not, I feel that, but I feel that with a Biden-Harrison ticket, you're looking at some serious stuff happening really fast.
I agree with you. I agree. Yeah, wholeheartedly.
I'm not happy.
So let's talk predictions on how this plays out, right? The mainstream media is already announcing Biden the winner. There's still states, I'm here in Georgia, Georgia is saying they're going to do a recount. There's other states where things are being contested. There's lawsuits. The Trump administration supposedly is filing lawsuits to contest the vote in multiple states. It was very suspicious, right? How the votes kind of turned in and how COVID set the tone for this, gave this excuse for mail-in ballots, for extra absentee ballots, for early voting. So it allows this window for all these voter risk discrepancies and all this potential sketchiness to take place.
Right.
And then we see these states that are taking the longest to count, and all these votes that are coming in late. And then 100% of these votes all going to Biden, which seems very suspicious.
Oh, incredibly suspicious. I mean, I hope that if there are lawsuits filed, that it will right any wrongs that have been done. I also know, my feeling is that you have to talk about the Transition Integrity Project.
Yeah. Please elaborate on that, because I think I was watching the one of your YouTube, I think the YouTube a video you put out today, I think, or maybe it was yesterday. I've lost track.
Our special edition.
Our special election edition.
I was watching a little bit of the special election edition from yesterday, and you touched on that, and then I Googled it and I started going down the rabbit hole on that. What is it called again? The Transition
Integrity Project, the TIP, Transition Integrity Project.
Transition Integrity Project. So I Googled it and I started reading about it, and then I realized I had to, just my life's been a whirlwind. I didn't have enough adequate time to go down that rabbit hole. So please take me down that rabbit hole now. Explain to me what that is. Explain to the viewers what's going on, what that is about.
It was a simulation that was conducted in June of 2020, and it's headed by Niles, I forget his last name, and a woman by the name of Rosa Brooks, who has connections with George Soros's Open Society Foundation. And Niles,
they're both academics,
and they're both very academics. Niles comes out of the University of California, Berkeley, and he is in an organization that focuses on transhumanism.
Right.
So why is a person who is part of the Open Society Foundation and has a long list of connections with intelligence community positions, okay, and Niles, who's part of this organization that is deals with transhumanism, why are they heading a simulation event to simulate out the November 2020 elections? And so they gamified or simulated what they felt would be the various responses to the various outcomes that would come with the election.
So a variety of scenarios.
So there were 4 scenarios. So we're in, I would say we're in sort of maybe in game 3 now. So the first scenario was to, hey, look, we've got to make sure that all the ballots are counted. I did a blog post about it, so we can link that as well. It's a little more comprehensive than what I'm saying right now. But then game 2 is, Biden won, and you would get a lot of the media response and the support and the partying on the streets to sort of support this narrative.
Right.
And then game 3 is, oh no, wait, Trump actually won, and so they gamed it out. And then game 4 is the end stage game, which is that, oh, Biden actually did win.
Yeah.
So
and it'll be sort of quiet.
Yeah. So that's my feeling based on my background in media and marketing, and that's sort of my take on it. But they did a 22-page analysis of the gamification or the simulation event. So they did the simulation in June of 2020. They produced a report on that simulation in August of 2020. So we're kind of in the game 2, game 3 scenario right now.
So in game 3, so then they say that there's 4 games, right? 4 scenarios.
Yeah.
So between 2 and 3, Biden's announced the winner. People are celebrating. The people on the left are celebrating.
Right.
And then it turns out that now it looks like Trump won. Is that brought about by a court ruling, or what in that scenario changes the shift from Biden won to Trump won?
Yeah. So it's through him objecting and him putting out court lawsuits and also recounts that are going on, like what's going on in Georgia. And, you mentioned it, and I heard too that your governor is ordered a recount.
Right.
So these variety of different actions that are taking place from the GOP and other groups will feed into that scenario, because there's lots of different little things at play in the background of these scenarios that have been put into place, or that were explored in this event. Go on.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No. I mean, I think that my biggest concern about the Transition Integrity Project, just my personal concern, is why do you need 2 people to head it up who are involved with transhumanism and also national security platforms and the CIA and George Soros's Open Society Foundation? What the fuck is that about? Why do you do that to game out a presidential election?
Right.
And a lot of times when we see these simulations, right, that happen right before the actual event's supposed to happen or does happen, with Event 201, where we saw this war game simulation of what happens when a coronavirus pandemic takes over the world, and you have the heads of public health, and you have the heads of the airline industry and banks and MasterCard that are all taking part and figure how do we, big tech, like how do we handle this? How do we control the narrative? How do we minimize our financial, damages? It's very telling that if they're simulating this is kind of what we could. This is a good telltale sign of what we can expect.
Traditionally, I'm sorry, I want to get this point in. Traditionally, this is the realm of the PR agencies, right? Like the Hill and Knowltons of the world. And yet, what Julie's bringing up is this like this isn't a PR organization heading this up. This is people that are coming from a like the woman that she was talking about is from she's a lawyer, she's a law professor. And she's involved in all these different organizations as well as law, but and then this dude that's in a think tank that's associated with transhumanism. So, it's an unusual move to see this event take place, not headed up by PR, but from these other arenas and industries. Did you? Yeah,
no, that's exactly right. I mean, you know who Hill and Knowlton were, right? I mean, they're like
the PR agency in the world. One of them.
They're one of the biggest PR agencies in the world. They were behind the girl who said the babies are coming out of the
first Iraq Gulf War.
Yeah.
During the George H.W. Bush era.
Mm-hmm. Her name was Naya. She was like a daughter of an ambassador or something, and they pretended she was a nurse. And she made a statement in front of Congress or I don't know. This was a while. This was back in the 90s.
Yeah, this is the late 80s.
Was that to create cause to go to invade into Kuwait or into Iraq?
Yeah, so this was the invasion of Iraq the first time. Mm-hmm. And the reason was because Iraq was apparently invading Kuwait.
Right.
And so this was a PR campaign that had this girl come out and testify in front of Congress saying that Iraqi soldiers were breaking into hospitals and taking babies out of incubators and throwing them on the floor or bayoneting them. And it was all a big show. It was complete fabricated.
It was a PR campaign from Hill and Knowlton, who were like some New York firm. I mean, the oldest PR campaigns.
Yeah, I mean, I've done. I mean, as an employee of another company, I've done business with them and actually worked with some of their people. They're very wide-reaching.
Yeah.
So I mean,
everywhere. So the idea about these gaming events or these simulations, so the gamification of our lives, as I call it, why is it that these really creepy organizations are behind them, and not just your average, creepy organization like Hill and Knowlton? That's my question. And also my next question is, how much more are we going to be gamified? Like, what next scenario or simulation are we going to find out? Look, and after the fact, we find out always after the fact. We found out about Event 201 in March or April when it took place in October of 2019. Right. We found out about the Transition Integrity Project recently.
It's because other than people like yourselves that are doing independent journalism, journalism's dead. We have all the mainstream media has been parroting the same message. And I think this election has been a giant wake-up call for a lot of people on the right, realizing that even Fox News has been compromised and their beloved Fox News isn't on their side, with maybe the exception of Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson. The rest of that media outlet might as well be CNN. And all those media companies are owned by there's only 6 companies that control all the media of the world. Is it 6 or 5 now?
Yeah, I think it's 5.
Okay.
But so what's next? That's my question is, what other simulation are they going to create that we're going to find out a month afterwards?
What I want to know is if Event 201 had a plushie toy, why didn't TIP, or did they? I don't know.
Maybe they did have
I'd love to get one.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. Burning ballots or something.
I know.
Probably a Tylenol.
Maybe.
So here's my prediction. It's interesting because I wasn't familiar about that until just today. But my prediction with the election is that it's going to go as follows. It's the media has already announced Biden is the winner. Trump's going to contest it in the courts. It is going to go before the judges. Some states are going to be recounted, and then ultimately they're going to rule in Trump's favor. And then we basically see the left completely lose their mind. They have just become a rabid mob, right? Whatever the media tells them to do, they seem to follow 100%, whether that's mask up and stay inside for months, or if that is riot in the streets over racial injustice. It could be literally on a day difference. It's either you can't leave your home. If you leave your home for any reason other than just to get bare essentials, you are going to kill all the grandmas. Right. You are a threat to society, and there's nothing virtuous about you. Right. Or the next day, if you are not out in the streets protesting George Floyd's death, you are the problem, and you are destroying everything with your racism. Yeah. So my feeling is, if Trump then wins after they've already got this sense that they won, and Trump is declared the legitimate winner of this election, this will be confirmation for the hysterics on the left that Trump was the dictator that they were accusing him of this whole time, and he refuses to leave office. And then we've got a full-scale kind of civil war, like violence in the streets, something that really challenges, destabilizes the whole country, sends us into a civil war and to a state of just chaos. Because we know also with the globalists and the global fascists, whatever we want to call them, they like to order out of chaos, is the kind of their MO. Yeah. So what would be more chaotic than sending this country into full-scale civil war over Trump? The left claims that Trump's refusing to leave office, and the right will defend him staying in office because they'll say he was the legitimate winner.
Well, I think, if we see that kind of behavior, I think what will really be going on will be like what we saw with the BLM protests during the summer, or earlier, like late summer, during the summer, where it was. I'm going to say this: that they were basically somewhat fabricated. That they actually happened, but they were being put on by people who were hired to do these things, right? BLM is a highly funded, well-funded organization, and that there are actors that are performing the so-called violence, and the places that were being burned were planned. They needed them to be burned anyway, because they were planning to do other things with that property and that real estate, and then the whole statue toppling thing. Like, we know for a fact that the statues in San Francisco that were pulled down, one of them was just junk anyway, that was found in the early 60s that they decided to put up because they needed some decoration there. And so they didn't really have they didn't care about that statue, right? Yeah, right. But it did have historical meaning in that, it was like, well, he was, was a slaveholder and blah, 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 blah. And so, these kinds of things are all for show. And then that one statue that we show in one of our videos that got rolled down the street in England. Right. In communitarianism, it was so during one of these BLM protests, they pulled down the statue and rolled it down the street and then dumped it in the river. And then basically, after all the cameras went away, they fished it out of the river and they took it back to where it belonged. And they basically did they patched it up and redid, fixed it up, and it's probably not back up on a pedestal, but it's inside somewhere. They basically got funding for getting that statue reconditioned, or whatever they call that. I forget the term. Like when you want to redo
refurbished
whatever. That I'm sure that there was some sort of funding behind that, so that's why they targeted these things. So these things are all about targeting symbols, but there's also money behind that. And I think that what we're going to be seeing, if there is violence, it's going to be very specific and targeted, and it will be made to look like it's worldwide and it's nationwide, or and it's happening in your backyard. Whereas, I lived through the San Francisco earthquake in 1989, and the press made it look like the entire city was on fire, and it was really just like a couple blocks in a neighborhood where it was built on landfill, so the liquefaction took down buildings, and there were gas fires.
I mean, it's astounding. I think we've all learned the power the media has in creating people's realities and influencing their perception. And which something I wanted to talk about. I mentioned to you just briefly before we went live is how I feel that I've seen these similarities between the COVID cult, as I call it, and an actual cult indoctrinations. Like I've just finished watching these documentaries about Nexium, which was this like celebrity laden, crazed, like weird sex cult that was based in like Albany, New York, under this guy Keith Raniere. But a lot of the techniques that he used and other cult members use historically, the media has used to indoctrinate. The media and the public health industrial complex have used to indoctrinate people into this cult-like thinking with the masks and the hand sanitizer and the 6 feet. And one of the really interesting things in that documentary is they interview this guy, Rick Ross, he's a professional cult deprogrammer, where he goes in and families will hire him to try to like rescue their loved ones that have been brainwashed and simulated into one of these cults. And he will try to get them out and then try to kind of break the programming to get them back to see how they were being manipulated. But he goes over these 3 things as the defining core principles of what defines a cult. And one is that it has a charismatic leader that has absolute accountability. 2 is thought reform through coercive persuasion techniques. And the 3rd is that it does harm or exploits the cult members in some way. Now, I think we can definitely agree on 2 and 3. But if the COVID cult had a charismatic leader, who is it? Is it Fauci?
Fauci or Gates or both, you know.
Right. I think that, okay, so I have a lot to say regarding what we were just talking about and also what we're talking about now. So there's something called social movement organizations where they impact your community's ideas about what you think is good for your community. Mm-hmm. Social movement organizations are often integrated with like nonprofits. Mm-hmm. And so this is where you get this, swarm of sort of the Black Lives Matter protests where everybody is just on the same exact page. So what they're doing is these social movement organizations, which are funded, mm-hmm. And they use psychological warfare and techniques to indoctrinate people into these, movements and processes and all that. They bank on your self-esteem issues. They bank on your love of community. They use keywords, we want to make sure that no one's oppressed and things like that. So they really build up this idea that you can actually make a difference by getting out in the street and fighting for justice. Okay, so there's that aspect, and then the entire process regarding the electoral system mm-hmm. and the voting system. I mean, my feeling is that it's you're in deep. I had an interaction, and I did not respond to her, but I had an interaction with a dear, dear friend of mine today mm-hmm. who voted mm-hmm. for Biden, and she literally said, I just, I did it because I don't want Trump. And to mm-hmm. me, that just screams indoctrination. That just screams, right. That she's now in the cult. She's in a cult. Right. She's being used for a purpose that is incredibly nefarious. It's going to hurt all of us. All these people who voted for this fascist right. are going to bring us all down.
Well, and then to go to a place,
and you can't respond to people like
right,
that
exactly.
because they're literally having a psychotic episode. And if you engage with people that are having psychotic episodes, you will be hurt.
Mm-hmm. Julie was giving me an example of she's like, well, I can say orange, 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 and she comes back with, cream pie. Yeah. It's like, it's like completely different stuff, right? And
it's become really difficult, right, in the last 4 years with Trump and the media's portrayal of him and all this culture war that has kind of erupted, right? There's all these various things with BLM, and then the hashtag Me Too, all these things. There's like all this cultural tension, and these lines have been drawn everywhere. And I think it all roads lead back to narcissism. I think it's like you're saying, like these keywords of people want to fit in the community. But I think it's also social media has really enabled this rise in narcissism. And everybody, a narcissist's greatest fear is rejection from the collective and to not be validated. So when a lot of people just go along with things and fall in line because they fear being, non-heterodox, not being part of the conformist, whatever narrative. So I just had a thought that I think, maybe this portrayal of Trump, they're taking things that for a lot of people on the right, Trump stands for, like, machismo and maybe even kind of asshole masculinity, but also personal liberty and freedom. I'm not saying he definitely is those things, but I think he represents that. And I think the fact that he's been so demonized by mainstream media, mainstream culture, has really been like this concerted, this orchestrated attack on those things that have made America really great, and it's kept it as kind of the last bastion of freedom, of a value on democracy and individual liberties. And I feel like all those things are being demonized, and they've been demonized even more with the lockdowns, where we saw people that were protesting in Michigan, and they were being shamed as being militant, racist, or selfish because they wanted to buy seeds or mosquito repellent or they wanted to leave their house and feed their children.
Right.
This association that freedom and liberty is selfishness, because you're not thinking of the greater good, and the greater good's being set forth by these globalist billionaires that live in Davos.
Right, exactly. Well, like we like to say, the common good language, the common good is also responsible for public stonings, witch burnings, and any number of other public stockades. Right. So it's mob
all of that was done in the name of the common good as well.
Right.
So
it's mob rule, and
there is no common good. I mean, the only true sense of freedom, we call it sovereignty, but the only really true sense of a true democracy is if each individual has sovereignty and autonomy and choice and freedom.
Right.
You don't exist in a democracy unless you have the individual
freedoms. And so we recognize that personal autonomy is very important as well as collective autonomy.
Right.
So the individual, if the individual is not free, the society or the collective group is not free, right? You can't have one or the other. So
there's a lot of good language that comes from good, even going back to like Native American sort of way of working in their communities, that's been co-opted, repurposed, and represented for the benefit of the ruling class, for the benefit of this globalization, World Economic Forum bullshit.
Well, I find
that's going to hurt people.
Yeah, I find that a lot of rhetoric has been coming out of leftist language, whether it's anarchist or Marxist. They take it and they repurpose it and make it into something that hurts people rather than talking about liberation. So as opposed to it being liberatory and about liberation, it's more about keeping people in place and down, and using these words like the common good, which is I don't find in leftist, well, at least not in anarchist language, but you do find it in what's going on right now, and a lot of the communitarianism that's being used in these initiatives as well.
I mean, it's a cult.
Yeah.
Coming back to it's a cult.
We have the cult of Trump derangement syndrome, and we have the COVID cult. So if my scenario doesn't play out and my prediction's wrong, and it plays out the way that the integrity
Transition Integrity Project. Yeah.
Transition Integrity Project TIP, right? Transition Integrity Project plays out. So in the end, Biden is still the winner. Let's look at silver linings as having this blathering, senile old man and a cop, basically, as the villains to represent the global fascist agenda here in America. I think there's silver linings to that. I think the right is going to be really motivated and galvanized to resist, and they're also disenfranchised, thinking that their vote, if they can't change things with voting, then maybe it's going to take other means.
Exactly.
Yeah. So maybe that is the silver lining in a Biden-Harris, win.
Yes. So I think can I field this? Do you
Yes,
mind? I think that what is exactly that, is that it would galvanize those that are dubious of a forced vaccination. And we're talking about a series of vaccinations.
Yeah, it's not just going to be one jab.
It's not just going to be one jab. It's a series of vaccinations that will alter your human existence. Okay, so we'll have all of those people who typically come from the right galvanized to fight against Bill Gates and his initiatives and all that. But what the right doesn't realize is that there's a good part of the left, and we're those people that agree with them. So not only will you have the right galvanized, but you'll have a portion of the left, like the anarchist community.
Well,
like some of us in the anarchist community that put individual freedom and individual sovereignty first. We will also galvanize. So the left, the so-called left, who are really centrists, the Democratic Party will be on the margins. They will no longer be, they make up only 10% of the population to begin with. And yet they are writing all of the policies and all of the initiatives, and they've taken over the press and all of that. But they're only about 10% of the population. They're the managerial class. So they will be even further to the margins, and the working class and the right will come together.
That's our hope.
To me, I think that's a better outcome.
I think and that's
a realistic outcome.
I think those are realistic outcomes. The other thing is we feel that if Trump does, if this scenario with the TIP doesn't come to pass, and Trump does have another 4 years, that the right would just go into somnolence, right? That it'd be like, okay, well, we're good for another 4 years, and that's pretty much it. And they would not fight some of these global governance issues that are taking place, especially around like the interstate compacts that are coming together. And these things that are being put into place to bring.
What is that? Can you explain that? The interstate compacts?
Sure. Yeah. These interstate compacts have been around since the beginning of the country. They were a way of states coming together to agree on, water rights or mineral rights or, border issues, whatever they may be. And this is before after the revolution, before the Constitution. They were kept around even after the Constitution, although the Constitution, created and codified a lot of the issues that were, that these compacts were created for in the first place. But there were still other issues that needed to be addressed, like the border between, I think Georgia and South Carolina. I think there were some water rights issues that were going on. Okay, so these things existed before, but what's happening now is what we're looking at with global governance is the hierarchy would be like global, regional, local, basically. I mean, there might be a few things in between, but that's basically the building blocks. Interstate compacts are a way of regionalizing the United States and taking
we're talking like we're dividing the country up in districts, like Hunger Games stuff, basically.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so exactly. And so global governance is looking to take nation states out of the picture altogether. And like our last video that we talked about called Deconstruction, we talk about this very thing. We feel that the office of the President of the United States is actually going to go away. We feel that governors are going to go away, and what we'll have are these interstate compacts that are already being formed, and they're made up of corporate interests and the third sector. These are nonprofits and social movement organizations, NGOs, and governments. Okay, and the current situation, like for instance, the Pennsylvania, New York, and a bunch of other states, it's basically you've got one representative from each of the states, from the governor's office of each of the states, who's appointed, and then corporate members who are all appointed. So nobody in these compacts nobody's elected, right? And so it takes away the democracy from a body that is actually creating regulation, regulatory, well, for lack of a better word, regulations that could very well turn into laws. But again, these people are not voted in; they're selected,
They're just appointed.
And they're basically selected by the corporations who have the economic interests that are associated with these compacts.
Which is so it's that private public partnership.
Partnerships.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. And that's
essentially real fascism.
Yeah,
that is the absolute definition of fascism. So in a nutshell, you're part of the Southern Compact and we're part of the Northeast Compact. So we are part of Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Delaware, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. There's seven of us. I think you're Alabama, Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, maybe, I don't know, but.
And so, and y'all did a video on this.
The video we did. So basically what it is they formed these compacts and all the governors came together in like April, like just a few weeks after the COVID narrative started. And they all came together unilaterally and said that we will combine our resources, combine our corporate interests to field which areas in our little compact in our regions should open first. Like, we got to share an economy, we have to share a bureaucracy, and I was trying to explain this to some people in a group that I belong to called Reopen PA, where I was like, look, the reason that some places are opening first and some places aren't is because we're sharing an economy and a regulatory body with 6 other states now. It's no longer Pennsylvanians for Pennsylvanians or Georgians for Georgians. It's Pennsylvanians for Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Delaware. You know, it's you for all, and that's where you get this. That's why the motto, Biden's motto, which he pulled directly from Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, is "Build Back Better." Yep. That's why his acceptance speech was just peppered with the word unity, because it's no longer just Californians for Californians. They have to share an economy and a regulation with Washington and Nevada and Oregon. I think it's Oregon and Nevada and California. So there are some states that are not part of these interstate compacts that were formed. Unfortunately, we live in one, you live in one. So there are some states.
So what are the rogue states, like South Dakota?
Or like New Hampshire,
Wyoming.
Vermont is not part of it, and
Arizona is another one.
Right. In fact, I read an article where like the governor of, I think it was Vermont or New Hampshire, got a call from Cuomo, the governor of New York, who said, "So you're going to be part of our new Northeast Compact, right?" And he was like, "No, click. That's not what my constituents voted for." So. So all of this is happening in the background. And what it is like you said before, is they will answer to a body that represents global governance, a body that represents the globalization of all of us. So
we're coming up in an hour, so we should probably tie it all together. But that's a great place to really kind of wrap things up, is like global governance, right? And that in my opinion, that's what this has all been about, right? They created it's the Hegelian
dialectic.
Thank you. Where problem, reaction, solution, right? They create this global problem, the scamdemic, COVID's out, it's going to kill everybody. Countries and states weren't prepared. They didn't have enough ventilators, blah, blah, blah. Even though now we know ventilators just killed people, and yet they keep using that as an example. And so now we got to create a global governance to solve these problems, and after the public reacted to that manufactured crisis with terror and, dread, and they're afraid to even leave their house, they're afraid to being, around family members. So we got to create this global governance. And what seems to be a biosecurity state. Like, I fear that unless we really fight back and we tear down this infrastructure that's being built, the plexiglass and the masks and all this stuff is going to stay in place forever.
Yeah, because people have been brainwashed.
Right. So these are visual representations of a very draconian and very authoritarian and totalitarian next stage move, which is, you know, the capture of you for profit into the, you know, something called impact investors.
Right.
You know, they're already in the schools right now, and they're able to do it through the schools because we're not there to oversee it. So the plexiglass and the masking and all that is a visual representation of a much more sinister goal that has to do with biofascism, where every thing about your body is tracked and used for profit. We go into this in our video, The Great Reset,
and in lifelong learning.
Yeah. So,
and it's not just it's a behavioral market. It's so they're basically tracking your behavior, and creating financializing you through behavioral markets, through your health data. So what does she call it? Bio data markets. I forget the term. And so all these things are going to be used, basically you as a human are going to be reduced to a form of capital. It's a human capital market. Right. They're literally reintroducing slavery.
Yes, literally.
Yeah.
Just very quickly, I know that we're coming up on the hour. When the country was first, forming, think of the gold rush. Think when people, rushed to California to dig into the earth to find the gold. Okay, so we are the earth. Our bodies are the earth that is being mined for the gold, and the gold nuggets are, I know it sounds crazy. It sounds like a science fiction novel, but the nanobots that will be part of the vaccine or be it's not actually a vaccine. I hate using that word. It's not a vaccine at all. It's basically they want to upgrade you like you would upgrade your computer system. Mm-hmm. So you're upgraded into a dashboard, and these nanobots will take your temperature, check your cholesterol, and you will be given alerts, constant nudges and alerts to buy the product to help your cholesterol go down, make that appointment, that telemedicine appointment on your screen with your doctor. And it will be like kind of a punitive existence, mm-hmm. where corporations and techno-fascism gets rich off of what they pull out of you, the way we got rich by pulling the gold out of the earth. It's the best way I can explain it.
I wonder, so, we have multiple vaccines in the running to be the winning vaccine. We have, of course, Moderna's Bill Gates. Bill Gates is funding all of them, to my knowledge, but one of his, pet projects is the Moderna mRNA vaccine, which be the first of its kind, a gene editing vaccine. We actually encountered, my organization, I Do Not Comply, we had a protest down at Grady Hospital here in Atlanta, Georgia, where they're trying to find unsuspecting African-American people from the working class communities around Grady to participate in the Moderna phase 3 trials.
Right.
And we made so much noise. We were out there for hours that the people conducting the Moderna trials came out to even speak with us, which was interesting. We caught some of that. It's ended up on one of our channels or on our Facebook page.
Good for you. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. You can find a list. I can send you all a list of all the clinical trial sites all across the country. They're pretty much every major city. They're testing the Moderna vaccine.
It's like the Tuskegee, medical experiments all over again, right?
100%. If people aren't familiar with that, that was an experiment where they knowingly let an African-American population suffer and die with syphilis. They, under the guise that they were treating them, they were giving them basically saline or shots that had no antibiotics, because they wanted to see what syphilis would do to the human body and how it could be transmitted to their offspring and to their other family members. And by the end of that, the last 20 years of that study was overseen by the CDC. So nobody should put their faith in that organization.
Or Fauci.
Or Fauci.
Or Gates.
Exactly.
I mean, oh my God, yeah.
So, but my question is with the vaccine, and is, how much of it will be that nanobot technology and something that really pushes us into that full-blown transhumanism, and how much of the vaccine will just outright either sterilize or kill or paralyze people? Because like we talked about earlier, is depopulation is one of their major goals. And now they've created a scenario where they can get millions of people to line up to take this jab, either willingly or under coercion.
Yeah, I mean that's such a huge topic, and it has to do with class war, and classism, and so that's a whole other topic.
I know. Maybe that's a can of worms for another day, but
yeah, I mean we're over an hour now.
But food for thought.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Collins, it's been so nice to meet you, kind of face to face, at least through the screen. I encourage anybody who watches this to check out your YouTube channel and your website, Book of Ours, and be sure to. We're always looking for new freedom fighters for I Do Not Comply. We are about to be a registered 501c3, but we're fighting on multiple fronts, from billboards to educational videos to obviously grassroots street-based activism. This is a war that has to be fought on many fronts. So let's keep building our base and our network of resistance. And
got it.
Okay,
yeah, that's amazing.
And let's do this again soon.
Yes, let's do that.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank y'all.
Thanks.
All right. I see you soon. Bye.
Book of Hours is determined to remain an essential platform that offers a creative interpretation for lockdown skeptics and experts who have been censored by mainstream press. Thanks to your donations, we can carry on doing this essential work as working artists. These big issues of the day are vital and need to be heard. So please share our videos, subscribe to our YouTube channel, make a one-time donation on our PayPal page, but most importantly, please be a part of our team on our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/bookofhours and hit the blue button titled Become a Patron. Thank you.